Setup mode allows you to take up to 16 of these very complex programs. As we said, the programs can have 32 different layers in them. Each layer can have oscillators and filters. But we can combine now 16 of these programs in setup mode. Setup mode also, there are arpeggiators that can be active and triggered from the keyboard or from pedals. You can trigger sequences from the keyboard or from pedals or from switches. It's a very powerful performance mode. Now we'll take a look at setup mode. I press setup, and we'll go to just some kind of a default setup. Inside the setup, when I press edit, I'll see zone 1 of 1. We can have 16 zones. Again, these programs can have up to 32 layers and then 16 zones. The zones allow me to do anything from place the sound on the key range. Right here I have it across the whole keyboard. Select the velocity range. What kind of note map? There's some interesting stuff I can do where I say I want every other note to play with this sound, so then every odd note wouldn't make sound. I might have a different zone playing 2 of 2 or 1 of 3. So there's really interesting stuff. Or constant. You'll find some really interesting stuff. Or inverse. Maybe you want to play the piano going up, but the sound is going down. So we've thought of the creative people, not just the stuff that you want to do normally. A lot of different velocity curves supplied, so you can change different velocity curves. You have reverse and compressed and crossfade. A lot of really cool stuff. And then you get to the normal stuff you would want for each zone, the volume, the panning. You can set up different pitch bends for each zone, different assignments for the wheels, for the ribbon if you had the ribbon plugged in, the sliders you can assign to any parameter. So I can go through and look at a huge list of sources that I'm now patching this slider into. And all of these MIDI control numbers could then be assigned. Like for example, MIDI 2, I could go into my program and say, MIDI 62, I'm patching into control filter sweep for the cutoff. So then when I move slider A, filter cutoff would move. So again, you have a ton of control sources. CC pedal inputs, you have 2 CC pedals and a breath input. You can assign to do what you want. Pressure, 3 different foot switches, and then your arpeggiations. You can toggle what type of arpeggiation you want, whether you want it to come on momentarily, when you release it stops or it stays on. Ribbon configuration, your arpeggiator zones. You can determine what keyboard range will trigger an arpeggiation, what kind of pattern, what the note orders are. And then riffs. These are actual sequences. So you can go into your sequence library and call up any of the sequences that you have in memory and trigger them from a range on the keyboard as well. So again, it's really powerful stuff. You get into your effects section, where now you can decide whether you want insert effects on each of the programs. The ones that were programmed in the factory programs, you can use those. You can add auxiliary effects, master effects for mastering. Very, very powerful architecture in setup mode. People have taken this instrument out and performed what used to take 5 and 6 keyboards. And the reason you can do it is because you have such a large keyboard range and you have such flexibility of where to place things, what triggers them, and how they respond to your touch. I'm going to show a setup that I call CM Orchestra that uses 9 different zones, and I'm using the zones to have different orchestra instruments placed in different ranges, where different pedals with my feet that I'm operating will bring in and mute certain instruments. Different controllers that I touch on the keyboard will bring in different instruments. So this is all happening within one single setup, live under the fingers and the feet. dynamic. I'm just using some pedals and some controls to manipulate. If you're doing anything sound for picture and you're trying to landscape out a nice orchestral pass for a different passage in a film, it's really quick, handy, and effective. You can go back later, of course, and then put in all your final parts. But it's good for sculpting to picture. Now I'm going to show a setup that's using some more contemporary pop sounds, rock sounds in this case, borrowing from the legendary Jeff Beck's tune, The Pump. You'll hear some of the drums and bass and lead guitar sounds found. These are all stock patches, by the way. So I'm just bending pitch and having fun with the guitar sound, hitting a few bad notes, which is good for a keyboard player. Basically, I'm triggering a sequence in this. I also have the effects are assigned individually to the instruments. The drums have some compression. The lead guitar has amp modeling and distortion. The bass has a little bit of distortion and compression. So again, very flexible, all-in-the-box workstation. Moving into other things that this setup mode can do that are very powerful. Here's a setup using some of the arpeggiations and triggering different sequences on different keys. I'll start with the drum groove. So right here we have 8 different sequences triggering. I'm going to assign these buttons on the top when I perform with this live to do mute and solo, and then the sliders can actually bring in and out the volume mix. So I can be mixing this on the fly. I also can transpose this from different keys in the editing mode. So these are all templates set up just to show you kind of what's going on in the setup mode. The sequencer I'm going to talk about here just very briefly because setups can trigger sequences. The sequencer is a 16-track sequencer, and you have actually 2 different 16 tracks that you can chain together for up to 32 tracks of operation. In each of the tracks, you have piano-style editing, where piano roll, where you can go in and edit a single effect, or a single event rather, or you have track editing. And they're very complex in what they offered you as far as software to do the editing. You have controller thinning, you have the ability to cut, copy, paste, you have the ability to insert into tracks, you have the ability to erase individual events, even within the track editor, like mono pressure, or you can scale mono pressure. Very, very full function sequencer. So you can really stay inside the box and do an awful lot of your production work inside the Kurzweil PC3x. The Kurzweil PC3 series comes in 3 flavors: the 88-note weighted action hammer weighted, which is the PC3x, the PC3, which is a 76-note, and then they have a PC361, which is a 61-note synth action. So these are the latest in the workstation from Kurzweil. Very powerful. Check them out. Check out GearWire for more information and the latest updates on Kurzweil products.